Mewtwo and Mew in Pokemon the first movie are actually foils for different philosophies. While Mewtwo spends much of his time contemplating the meaning of life, his purpose, and his pain, I think Mew actually encapsulates many of the tenets of Taoism. I initially wrote this script as a deep dive into Mewtwo's character arc, but around the time I was writing it, I was reading Tao Te Ching, The Warrior Within, and then the Tao of Pu, and it got me thinking about how the principles of Taoism are actually very much present in this movie, and it honestly just added a whole new layer to one of my childhood favorites. What's poppin', y'all? This is Go Play Hero. Before we talk about Mew, we actually first need to understand Mewtwo, ironically enough, because his arc and backstory is what makes Mew's direct contrast so fascinating. Mewtwo's fate is already being decided for him before he even opens his eyes, at least according to the people who created him. For those who have never seen the movie or, weren't born in the 1900s, Mewtwo in the anime was created by scientists using the DNA of Mew. The project was spearheaded by Dr. Fuji. He and his team were hired by Giovanni to track down Mew's DNA and create a clone that would become the world's strongest Pokemon. More on Dr. Fuji in a bit. The team of scientists who cloned Mewtwo from Mew obviously didn't see him as an individual. To them, he's nothing more than a successful experiment, a living weapon designed to serve their interests. And they really don't even try to hide it. The moment he becomes self-aware, they tell him his entire reason for existing is basically to be useful to them. This is a worldview known as Essentialism. Essentialism is the belief that everything from objects to people, or in this case, Pokemon, have a fixed, unchanging essence, a core identity or purpose. Meaning is thrust upon the individual, whether by society, cultural norms, or by nature itself, a higher power in some cases. But off-rip, Mewtwo does not accept this. He doesn't understand why his purpose should be something dictated by others who clearly don't care about him. And that sets him on a journey of self-discovery, in a sense, one that's a lot deeper and more relatable than you might expect. The question of purpose is something that almost everyone asks at some point, even if we aren't clones born in a lab. I think I might have to check some papers on that one. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? The infinity of an ever-expanding universe and eternal life is just as terrifying as the potential oblivion of the beginning and end of it all. What does this blip of consciousness that is me really mean? Mewtwo is constantly asking why all the time. He's like a 2-year-old who's just trying to figure everything out. It is the curse of an evolved brain. And just like Mewtwo, a lot of us start off being told what our purpose is supposed to be. Maybe it's religious, framed as part of a divine plan. Maybe it's cultural, shaped by traditions and expectations, passed down through generations. Or maybe it's just the pressure of society where success is measured by checking the right boxes. It's easy to grow up feeling like there's a path you should take, whether you choose it or not. And at some point, for a lot of people, that question starts creeping in. But what if I don't want that? When Mewtwo realizes he was created to be nothing more than a tool, his reaction is pure destruction. It's destructive. He lashes out, and I mean, he literally mass murders all the scientists in the lab in an instant. Succeed you did, Dr. Fuji. Succeed you did. Speaking of Dr. Fuji, he's actually really important to Mewtwo's character thematically. See, the whole reason Dr. Fuji agreed to do research on Giovanni's dime was because he's been trying to bring his daughter, Amber, back to life. This is a story we see unfold both in the Japan-only audio drama, The Birth of Mewtwo, and the short titled The Uncut Story of Mewtwo's Origin. It's wild because, as we'll see, Amber is low-key one of the most important characters in this movie, and she's not even in the movie. In the short, Dr. Fuji is obsessively trying to bring Amber back and succeeds in recreating part of her consciousness. His wife leaves him as she can't bear to see him try to do something so morbid, exclaiming that Amber's gone and she's never coming back. This could be interpreted two ways, though I think the latter is more compelling. Either she simply doesn't have any faith that Fuji will succeed, or her point is that even if he creates a perfect one-to-one clone with all the same memories, it still isn't technically their Amber. She would still be a completely different being all her own. The daughter they lost, no copy will ever replace her, which is a brilliant parallel to Mewtwo's dilemma.
Am I only a copy? Nothing but Mew's shadow?
Now, this animated short is really tragic. We see a young Mewtwo's consciousness telepathically communicating with Amber's clone's consciousness. She goes by Ambertwo, of course she does. They're joined by clones of a Bulbasaur, Charmander, and a Squirtle. Ambertwo shows Mewtwo the street where she grew up, projected from her memories. The four of them fly around the neighborhood. She teaches Mewtwo about the sun, the moon, the stars, the wind. It's super cute and wholesome. But something really horrifying happens. Charmander just fades away. Then Squirtle, then Bulbasaur. They don't feel so good, Dr. Fuji. Back at the lab, we see that the clones are gone. Yeah, Yeah, they're no longer of this earth. It's pretty dark, actually. And maybe one of the saddest moments in the Pokemon anime, Ambertwo begins to fade as well. Mewtwo cries. Amber speaks about a bedtime story that's also mentioned in the movie that tells the tale of Pokemon's tears being filled with life, something we see in action during the climax when the Pokemon resurrect Ash, but we'll save that for later. Ambertwo tells Mewtwo she has to go. He doesn't understand why, and neither does she. The last thing she tells him is, "Don't be sad, Mewtwo. You should be happy. You're alive, and life is wonderful." Mewtwo gets increasingly upset. The scientists peep and give him a serum that causes his memories to be wiped. We see him gradually grow older into the Mewtwo we know today, and he thinks to himself,
Life is wonderful, but why?
it's kind of a profound question. Why is life wonderful? Is it because of happiness, joy? How often do most people feel happy? Surely not all the time. And it's a question that encapsulates Mewtwo's story. There are moments that will come where things seem meaningless. We've all felt directionless at one point or another. Loss, pain. It can be hard to see why life is wonderful in those moments. But even Ambertwo, in the midst of passing on, as a little girl no less, she still saw life as wonderful. She saw hope. But Mewtwo, after Ambertwo fades away, he exclaims, "These tears, what good are they?" He saw nothing but despair. They are two sides of the same coin. But maybe Amber was onto something here, wise beyond her years. Could it be that life is wonderful because it just simply is? Once Mewtwo wakes up, he understandably refuses to be controlled and turns against the people who tried to shape his destiny. Mewtwo struggles with his own identity. Even after he escapes the control of the scientists, he's still lost and he still wants direction. Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, stops by his now very much defunct island where the lab once stood to find Mewtwo standing amongst the flames and rubble. Ever the shady businessman he is, Giovanni persuades Mewtwo into joining forces as quote-unquote partners. He promises to show Mewtwo how to control his power, making him invincible. Giovanni does more than promise Mewtwo invincibility. He says that he may be the strongest Pokemon, but he isn't the strongest creature, and that humans had the power and knowledge to create the strongest Pokemon in the first place. He promises that they can rule the world together rather than allowing Mewtwo to roam free, uncontrolled, risking destroying everything in his path with no world left to rule.
A wildfire destroys everything in its path. It will be the same with your powers unless you learn to control them.
And yeah, I guess Giovanni's technically not wrong here, but obviously he has no interest in partnership and only further wishes to control Mewtwo for his own personal gain. Giovanni claims he wants to help Mewtwo fulfill his purpose, but again, Mewtwo just asks, what is that? What is his purpose? He has no idea. He's searching for purpose and putting his faith in a corrupt institution to find that. In this case, a mob boss. Mewtwo goes into this partnership thinking it will give him answers, but it's really just more essentialism in disguise. In the film, we get a glimpse of Giovanni utilizing Mewtwo's power to catch Pokemon en masse with a group of grunts and defeat trainers. There's even a bit in the TV show that takes place during this montage where Gary gets smoked by the armored Mewtwo at Giovanni's gym, but we didn't see all the details of Giovanni and Mewtwo's partnership. The Birth of Mewtwo audio drama, though, gives us a much deeper glimpse at Mewtwo's philosophy while with Giovanni, as well as some less abridged info on their escapades. Upon Giovanni's offer, the audio drama even shows us how much pain Mewtwo is suppressing to showcase that he believes this is true strength. Living creatures don't shed tears. If they do, they're only tears of pain. I'll not cry even tears of sadness or pain because I must be the world's strongest. I don't have sadness nor pain. Clearly harkening back to what he said about tears during the short and the pain he felt losing Ambertwo and his Pokemon friends.
These tears, what good are they?
Though he has no memory of that pain, it's amazing how powerful our subconscious minds can be. It's also revealed that not only was Giovanni using Mewtwo to catch a ton of Pokemon and defeat trainers, but he also even stole some kid's Magmar and had Mewtwo straight up attack this child. Turns out Team Rocket is actually capable of stealing Pokemon and getting away with it. Who knew? Mewtwo then goes on to attack a bunch of people and we hear screaming along with explosions. It's not entirely clear if those people survived or not, to be honest, but given what he did to the lab lab, it's very possible they did not survive. Needless to say, Giovanni put Mewtwo up to some pretty heinous tasks, and at first Mewtwo thinks he's in more control, more in tune with himself, but it's an illusion. Mewtwo used copium. It's not very effective. He still asks, why am I here? Mewtwo ponders to himself if his life is fun. He finds that he enjoys defeating Pokemon and being the strongest, but despises humans, calling them those cheating creatures who boast about strength they don't have. And you know, that's a fair critique.
But why am I here?
God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. As we know, he does eventually escape Giovanni's armor. Giovanni comes out and tells Mewtwo that his purpose is to obey his master. That's it. Pretty bad strategy for a mob boss, I gotta say. If the role assigned to him was a lie, then maybe he has to be the one to assign himself a new one. And so, he tries to carve out a place in the world where he's in control, where he decides the rules. He says that he will stand alone and he will find his own purpose.
I will find my own purpose and purge this planet of all who oppose me.
Okay, glad he's finding a purpose for himself. He's a little confused, but he's got the spirit. Mewtwo is in a sense embodying the quote from Nietzsche. He killed God, metaphorically, by abandoning Team Rocket and, literally killing his creator. He plans to flood the planet with the storm he created using his psychic abilities, sparing only the Pokemon who don't oppose him. Bro is in his Team Aqua era. Mewtwo moves on to a form of a negative existentialism. Obviously, our boy is pretty existential, but the core of existentialism as a philosophy is that life has no inherent meaning, but we are free to give ourselves meaning. This could be interpreted positively or negatively. Some people find meaning in helping out the homeless, others find meaning in music, others find it in harming others. There's a wide range that this could go. I'd say flooding the world out of spite is pretty negative, not great vibes. He is embodying will to power, also a concept by Nietzsche, that all living things, especially humans, are driven not just by survival or pleasure, but by a deep desire to grow, assert, and transcend themselves. What is good? All that heightens the feelings of power, the will to power, power itself in man. What is bad? All that proceeds from weakness. Though Nietzsche's idea of power is to overcome adversity and better oneself, many people hide their weakness by clinging to control as a substitute for true inner strength, and that's exactly what Mewtwo is doing. In many ways, he's acting on the existentialist concept known as bad faith, which is to live inauthentically or by the standards set by the world around them. Yes, Mewtwo is technically free now and carving his own path, but he's using that freedom to uphold values that aren't necessarily true to his core. He's using narcissism and desire for absolute control to mask his pain and existential dread. He overpowers his despair with dominance. He mind controls Nurse Joy, tricks a bunch of trainers to go to a remote island, jacks all their Pokemon, and turns them into clones. Almost a symbol of his latent desire for camaraderie, given that the main clones are evolved from Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, Pokemon that were with him in the lab. Mewtwo challenges the trainers who are trying to stop him, but throughout it all, it's like he's clinging to something. He needs to win, to prove something. And that's most prevalent when Mew enters. He can finally challenge Mew and prove once and for all that clones are superior, that he is superior. But Mew doesn't play that game with him, and Mew loves games. Mew is truly the glue that holds this all together. If Mewtwo is constantly brooding and contemplating the meaning of life, Mew is truly the antithesis. The tagline Mewtwo versus Mew was about more than them duking it out to see who's the strongest. It was also about the clashing in approaches to life. In fact, Mew didn't really seem to care about being the strongest at all, and that's kind of the point. A good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving. Lao Tzu. Mew exhibits many characteristics of the Chinese philosophy known as Taoism. Taoism is an ancient spiritual tradition that describes the natural flow of the universe, or the way, as it's called. It's not about rules, dogma, or strenuous effort. It's just about going with what is. Basically, it's vibes. Mew's whimsical movements and apparent lack of concern for outcomes reflect this Taoist ideal of Ziran. Ziran is about being spontaneous, natural, and of oneself, something Mew is abundant in throughout the film. It's playing around, giggling on the windmill, it's in awe while floating in a bubble, loves playing tricks on people. Mew is truly just being and having fun, taking in all life has to offer with awe and wonder, as if it were a newborn child. Throughout the whole movie, Mew is having fun. In contrast, if you recall, fun is something that Mewtwo had to sit and think about in the audio drama. Fun became more of an intellectual concept to ponder for Mewtwo, rather than an experience. He was too busy in his own mind. But Mew has no ambition, no goal, no ego. It finds joy in the simplest things. Similarly, Mew also has no concern of what its purpose is. Mew loves nature, people, and Pokemon all the same. It takes every experience as they come, without judgment, without thought. Mew seems to be more or less lacking in any true desire. Taoism states desire begets comparison, discontent, and ultimately suffering, something we see in abundance with Mewtwo. His desire to shape the world in his image for power, for revenge, has corrupted him and taken hold of his psyche. Taoism doesn't reject all desires entirely, especially not natural, instinctive ones like rest, food, or joy even. These are part of Ziran, the natural way. But when those desires are based in ego or excessiveness, that's when it clouds the mind and pulls away from one's inner peace. In battle, Mew demonstrates a Taoist concept known as Wu Wei, which is essentially the idea of action within action, doing without doing. It's a great juxtaposition. One of the most powerful Pokemon on Earth is just an adorable, tiny, gentle, fun-loving cat thing. It matches up to Mewtwo in terms of strength, but it didn't need to train its life away or be made in a lab by supposedly superior humans. Mew is just Mew. Despite its lightheartedness though, Mew is strong in its own right, showing that true power doesn't come from force or control, but from being in flow and harmony with one's nature. It's inspiring. It's like the age-old adage, don't mistake kindness for weakness. Like, yeah, Mew doesn't want to fight, but it will run the fade if needed. But it's always from a response. It only attacks if provoked first. And even when it does, there isn't this sense of force or might or strain. It's almost like it's gently dancing with the universe. Kind of reminds me of Aang in Avatar a little bit. Taoism teaches all things contain yin and yang, opposing forces that must be balanced, not defeated. Mew never tries to overpower Mewtwo entirely, only to restore balance to Mewtwo's crash out. That would be a great name for the movie, actually. Mewtwo's crash out. Mew is a force of harmony, not conquest, not revenge, not even paper, a baddie on its arm and a rollie on its wrist. It is truly pure. Even in battle, Mew isn't angry, it's centered, still, a mirror.
A good martial artist does not become tense, but ready. Not thinking, yet not dreaming. When the opponent expands, I contract. When it contracts, I expand. And when there is an opportunity, I do not hit. It hits all by itself.
Taoism speaks on the idea that everything is connected. We are all one, literally birthed from the source of the universe, regardless of what you may believe that is. Mew is quite literally one with the world of Pokemon because it is the ancestor of all Pokemon. The DNA of every Pokemon, other than I guess the Arceus gang, can be traced back to Mew. Mew is capable of learning every single move in the games. Obviously, the case of this movie, Mewtwo and Mew are directly connected. Mewtwo sees himself as superior to Mew, or at least wants to try and prove that he is. He wants to rise above Mew, not acknowledging that they ultimately come from the same place. They are separate beings, but also connected whether Mewtwo likes it or not. In part due to Mew's connection to all Pokemon, Mew is kind of the epitome of Pu. Pu is also known as the uncarved wood or the uncarved block, a concept that's heavily talked about in the Tao of Pu. It represents simplicity and plainness, something's original, untouched state, pure potential without interference. Mew not only exhibits this idea on an emotional level, but in a literal biological one. Like I said, Mew is the ancestor of all Pokemon. It's stated that Pu, or the uncarved block, is full of potential. Once carved, it becomes something, but loses everything else that it could have been. But all of the 1,000+ Pokemon are, in many ways, carved blocks, tapping into the infinite potential of Mew into something all its own, something more specific. Mewtwo, by contrast, is maybe one of the most carved of them all, as he was deliberately engineered or carved by Team Rocket. He was designed to be the strongest, a tool with a narrow function. His entire journey is about unlearning that carving, trying to return to something more whole. The beauty of Mew being such a clear foil to Mewtwo is that Mew in many ways embodies the same exact characteristics as Ambertwo. It's a tragic irony that Mewtwo finds himself clashing against a Pokemon who so much resembles his dead friend. Ambertwo, in her dying moments, still said life is wonderful. She was grateful for having existed at all, even if just for a short while. That doesn't make her death any less sad or tragic, but it doesn't make her life any less meaningful either. Ambertwo, like Mew, was content in just being, going with the way, the same way Mew does the whole movie. Amber showed young Mewtwo the simple things like the wind and the stars, and it brought them so much joy and wonder. It didn't matter that the original her had died, or that everything they were experiencing was just a fabrication manifested from Amber's memories. All that mattered was that they were there, and that was enough, if even for a moment. Fortunately for, well, everyone, Ash is an insane person, runs directly into oncoming blasts from Mewtwo and Mew during their fight, turning Ash into stone. It is only the tears of the Pokemon that bring him back to life. It's this, seeing people and Pokemon come together to mourn a human, that causes Mewtwo's dark worldview to come crashing down. Having the context that Ambertwo spoke of the fairy tale of Pokemon having life within their tears right before her death, and that Mewtwo has spent his whole life so far hating tears because of how he felt from her death, makes Mewtwo's transformation at the end of the movie so much more poetic. I wish all that backstory was somehow included in the movie because it adds so much more depth. And the fact that the same heart-wrenching score plays in the background both for Ambertwo and Ash's death, it's just a really, really powerful full circle moment. It's even more poetic because Mew didn't even need to win the battle. It was genuine emotion that ultimately stopped the fight. True Taoist non-action, not brute force, not even logic. It's a reminder that you can't reason your way through every aspect of life. Some things in life are just felt and experienced genuinely and wholly. Yeah, it's cheesy, and it's a cliche that's been done before in a sense, but I think given the philosophical themes present in the movie, it's kind of poignant here. Mewtwo was searching for meaning, but his outlook was shaped entirely by his very real experience. Would flooding the earth and defeating Mew to prove he was the strongest really satisfy him? Would that really have been his destiny, his purpose? Not likely. His aspirations were painted entirely by hate and destruction, distorted by the unconscious despair he felt as a child and beyond, relying too much on systems to show him how to live, and lashing out at those systems for steering him wrong. He spends the entire movie searching for meaning, and by the end he realizes something more important. Purpose isn't something that's given to you, it's something you create for yourself. And you may be thinking, well, you know, him destroying the earth and liberating Pokemon was the purpose he gave himself initially, but not entirely. Sure, it was a conclusion he came to, and he's ultimately responsible for his own actions regardless, but it wasn't something that was really fulfilling for him deep down. It was a path that was passed down to him by latent grief and trauma. It wasn't absolute freedom. He was still shackled to his pain, tied to his past. He was still in part being defined by the people that made him, even though he thought he was taking matters into his own hands.
One of the many things I've learned from Mike is how, you know, there have been people in his past that have taken advantage of him, and he doesn't hold a grudge, lives in forgiveness.
Ooh. I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not really
yeah, listen.
Yeah, I'm not like...
You're not ready, brother.
I'm not like... You do me wrong?
No, the devil wins. Quick. The devil wins.
So you're saying the devil wins because someone did me wrong?
Because he changed you. So he's your master because he controls your emotions. He's not your enemy, he's your master. Because you're not who you used to be now. He stole that away from you.
In the beginning, Mewtwo reaches a point where he's no longer defined by the people who made him, but that resentment stays with him. But by the end, he isn't defined by his anger or his past either. He realizes that he doesn't need permission to exist on his own terms. And he can only come to that by letting go of the pain. He doesn't adopt Mew's carefree Taoist way of life, but that's okay too. He reaches a positive form of existentialism. We even see in Pokemon Journeys that he's been giving abused and mistreated Pokemon refuge. He chose to transmute his trauma into something positive for others, to make the world a better place rather than burn it all down like he did that lab. Mewtwo and Mew's battle is a battle of power on its surface, but it's also a philosophical arc through some of the deepest human questions. Mewtwo begins as a victim of essentialism, told his purpose was assigned at birth. He crashes into negative existentialism, spiraling through anger, despair, and domination in a desperate attempt to force meaning onto a meaningless world. A world he views through a lens of absurdity absurdity and betrayal. In contrast, Mew lives effortlessly in tune with the Tao, the Wei, free from ambition, expectation, or ego. Where Mewtwo fights to define himself through will to power, Mew simply is, embodying Ziran, the natural spontaneity of life, and Wu Wei, effortless harmony with the world. Mew has nothing to prove. It finds joy in the little things, and it fights only when balance is threatened and crushes it when doing so, might I add. By the film's end, Mewtwo moves from a self built on reaction and rage to one built on choice and compassion. He arrives at a form of positive existentialism, the realization that while life may have no built-in purpose, the freedom to choose your own meaning is not a burden, it's a gift. And one of Mewtwo's first lines in the movie is, "I am ready to be." He whispers it during the intro. And that's really all he needed to discover all along. He just needed to become ready to be. Mewtwo Strikes Back reminds us of something both existential and Taoist at once. You are not defined by where you come from. You are defined by what you choose to become. And sometimes choosing peace, wonder, and stillness is the most powerful thing of all. Life is wonderful, and that is the Tao of Mew. Thanks so much for watching. I had a blast researching for this one and just peeling back the layers of this story. There was even more detail than I realized, and it definitely got me back on a Pokemon kick again for sure. Special shout out to Livid for inspiring this video. I was originally working on a script for his channel that was completely Mewtwo focused, and things kind of changed. And yeah, like I said, I was reading a lot of Taoist and Taoist adjacent books at the time, and it just kind of turned into this different angle with the whole Mew thing. So yeah, big thanks to him for kind of spurring this on in the first place. If you haven't checked his stuff out, definitely go do so. I'll leave a link in the description down below. He has a bunch of cool Pokemon retrospectives, but also a lot of Nintendo gaming stuff in general. He's really dope, really thorough. I have more thoughts on Pokemon that I'm super hyped to talk about here, so if you enjoy this one, be sure to subscribe and be on the lookout. Until next time, peace and hair grease.